The reservation confirmation email was still open on my laptop when I woke up that morning. The subject line reading "Happy Birthday Dinner," like it had been typed by someone who meant it. He had made it 2 weeks earlier. I remember because he told me he finally found a place I would like. Somewhere quiet, not too crowded, with food I had mentioned once in passing. He had sounded proud of himself when he said it, like he had been paying attention. That morning, he left early. He said he had a long day ahead. Something about a last-minute issue at work, meetings that couldn't be moved. He kissed my forehead quickly, already half out the door, and told me we would celebrate properly that night. I stayed in bed for a few minutes after he left, looking at the ceiling, trying to decide if anything felt off. It didn't. Not yet. I got up, made coffee, and went through my usual routine. A few messages had already come in, friends wishing me happy birthday, my sister sending a voice note, a coworker reminding me we had a presentation later that week. Around noon, I texted him, just checking what time tonight. He replied about 20 minutes later, which wasn't unusual, saying he might be late but would confirm soon. I told him that was fine. By late afternoon, I hadn't heard anything else. I checked the reservation email again, as if it might change. It still said 7:30 p.m. At 6:15, I texted him again, asking if I should head over or wait. He replied at 6:40. He said something had come up, something he couldn't get out of, and asked if we could reschedule. He said he felt bad. He said he would make it up to me. I read the message twice. Then I closed my laptop. I canceled the reservation myself. I told him it was okay. I didn't ask what came up. That night, I ordered food, something simple, and ate it on the couch while watching something I wasn't really paying attention to. My phone buzzed a few more times with birthday messages. He didn't call. At 10:12 p.m., he sent a text. "Happy birthday again. I owe you one." I replied with a thank you. That was it. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. Not in a dismissive way, just normal. He asked if I slept well, if I had eaten, if I wanted to go out that weekend instead. He mentioned a place we had talked about visiting. I said sure. For a while, I let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because I couldn't place why it felt wrong. Forgetting a birthday happens. Being busy happens. People reschedule things all the time. But something about the way he had handled it stayed with me. Not the cancellation, the timing, the lack of detail, the way he didn't ask how my night ended. A few days later, I was at a coffee shop near his office. It wasn't planned. I had a meeting nearby and decided to stop in before heading home. I saw someone I recognized. She worked in the same building as him. I had met her once, briefly, at a company event. She had introduced herself casually, said they worked on adjacent teams. She smiled when she saw me, like we were familiar enough to acknowledge each other, but not enough to stop for a full conversation. We ended up sitting at nearby tables. At some point, she mentioned she had a late night earlier that week, something about work running over longer than expected. She said it casually, almost as an aside, like it wasn't important. Then she mentioned the restaurant, the same one from the reservation. She said the food was good, but the service had been slow. I remember pausing for a second, holding my cup a little too still. I asked what day she went. She told me. It was my birthday. I didn't react. I nodded, said I had heard good things about the place. She didn't say who she was with. I didn't ask. I finished my coffee, said it was nice seeing her again, and left. On the walk home, everything started to settle into place, not all at once, gradually. The timing, the cancellation, the lack of explanation, the fact that he had chosen that restaurant, the fact that she had been there. I didn't confront him. Not that day, not that week. Instead, I paid attention. I noticed how often her name came up in passing, usually in neutral contexts, work-related, group settings, nothing that stood out on its own. I noticed how he described his schedule, which days he said he was busy, which evenings he said he might be late. I started keeping track of small things, nothing obvious, just patterns. A few weeks later, I saw her again, this time at a gathering with mutual friends. She greeted me the same way, pleasant, composed, not overly familiar. At some point during the evening, I noticed how they interacted, not in a way that would stand out to anyone else, just comfortable, too comfortable. The kind of ease that comes from repetition, from spending time together outside of shared spaces. I didn't need confirmation. I already knew. What I needed was clarity, not for him, for me. That's when I decided to plan the party. It wasn't something I announced immediately. At first, it was just an idea, a delayed celebration, something I could frame as making up for the missed birthday, something that would make sense to everyone, including him. I started small. I booked a space, nothing too formal, but big enough to hold a crowd. I picked a place that allowed music, drinks, movement, something that felt social but not staged. Then I started inviting people. Friends first, then coworkers, then mutual connections. I made sure the guest list overlapped just enough. I invited him last. I told him I wanted to celebrate properly, that I hadn't done anything on the actual day, and it felt unfinished. He agreed easily. He said it was a good idea. He asked if I needed help planning. I told him I had it covered. Then I invited her. I kept it casual. I said a few of us were getting together, that it wasn't anything formal, just a late birthday thing. She said she would come. Neither of them knew that I knew. The week leading up to the party, I didn't change how I acted. I didn't pull away. I didn't become more attentive. I stayed exactly the same. If anything, I made sure there was no shift at all. I wanted everything to feel normal. The night of the party, I got there early. I checked the setup, spoke to the staff, made sure everything was in place. Music, lighting, drinks, nothing excessive, just enough to keep the atmosphere steady. People started arriving around 8. The room filled gradually. Conversations layered over each other, laughter building in small pockets. He arrived about 20 minutes in. He hugged me, said the place looked great, asked how I was feeling. I said I was good. She arrived not long after. She greeted me the same way she always did, friendly, composed, just slightly distant. I watched them throughout the night, not closely enough to be obvious, just enough. The way they gravitated towards similar groups, the way they occasionally checked where the other was, the way they avoided standing too close for too long. It was careful, but not careful enough. By the time the room was full, the energy had settled into something easy. People were relaxed. Drinks had been flowing long enough to soften edges, but not enough to blur awareness. That's when I decided it was time. I moved toward the center of the room, near where the music was slightly lower. I didn't ask for complete silence. I didn't need it. I just raised my voice enough to draw attention. People turned naturally. I thanked them for coming. I kept it simple at first. I said I hadn't done anything on my actual birthday, and it felt right to be surrounded by people who had been part of my life over the past year. I mentioned small things, moments that felt harmless, trips, dinners, work milestones. I spoke calmly, not slowly, not dramatically, just clearly. Then I started introducing dates, specific ones. I talked about a night a few months earlier when plans had changed last minute. I described it in detail, but without naming anyone. I said how I had waited for a confirmation that never came, how I had eventually canceled something that had already been arranged. A few people in the room exchanged glances, not because they knew, because they were starting to recognize the structure of what I was saying. I continued. I mentioned the restaurant. I described it the way someone would if they had been there, even though I hadn't. I said I heard the food was good, but the service could be slow. That's when the shift started. It was subtle, a change in posture, in attention. People were listening more closely now. I didn't look at either of them. I didn't need to. I kept going. I talked about patterns, about how small things don't mean much on their own, but over time, they start to connect. I listed moments, times he said he was busy, times she mentioned late nights. I didn't accuse. I didn't label anything. I just placed everything in order, date by date, moment by moment. The room grew quieter, not completely silent, but focused. You could feel people starting to follow the thread. I paused briefly, not for effect, just to take a sip of water. Then I finished. I said that sometimes you don't need explanations. You just need to see things clearly. I thanked everyone again for being there, and I stepped back. I didn't look at them immediately. I let the room react first. It happened exactly the way I expected. Not with noise, with tension. People turning slightly, trying to confirm what they had just understood. He approached me first. He said my name, like he was trying to keep his voice steady. He started explaining something. I didn't interrupt him. I just listened. Not because I needed to hear it, because it didn't matter anymore. She moved toward the exit, not quickly, but with intention. A few people noticed. That was enough. I didn't stop her. I didn't need to. The room had already shifted. Conversations resumed, but differently. Quieter, more aware. He tried to stay for a few minutes. Then he left too. I stayed until the end. I thanked people as they left. I helped clear a few things. I settled the bill. When I finally stepped outside, it was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels complete. I walked home slowly, not because I was thinking about what had happened, but because I wasn't. By the time I got back, my phone had a few messages. From him, from others. I didn't open them right away. I didn't feel the need to respond. The next morning, I read them. His messages were long. Explanations, context, things that were meant to reframe what I had already seen. I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to clarify. A few days later, I removed his things from my apartment. I packed them carefully, not out of sentiment, just out of habit. I left the box with a mutual friend. I didn't arrange a meeting. I didn't ask for one. Life adjusted quickly after that. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. Routines shifted. Spaces felt different, but nothing felt unresolved. That was the part I noticed most. There was no lingering question, no need to revisit anything. Everything had already been said, just not directly. A few weeks later, someone asked me why I handled it that way, why I didn't just confront him privately. I thought about it for a moment. Then I said I wasn't trying to confront anyone. I just wanted the truth to exist where it couldn't be reshaped. That was enough. I didn't need to call them out. The truth just needed a stage.